of this momentous occasion, we really are so happy to see you all here. There's a joke I heard earlier on this morning. Somebody said, and it was a parent. She said, I'm the birth to zero. And she was saying this, speaking to somebody that she gave birth to, and she says, I'm the reason why you are even here, so I should be here more than you. So with that said, we're also welcoming the parents of the birth to 10, the parents of the birth to 20, parents of the birth to 30, and from what I've seen, there's even birth to 40s somewhere here. One of the things that we discovered yesterday, so yesterday we were at Wits University and we are holding a similar event for the academic community. Some of the participants spoke. And one of the things that was very clear was just how connected people still are to the study. The level to which they still feel that they are part of something really big, inspiring, something that has so much meaning to South Africa. And this is one of the things that we really want to see happen here today when you engage with us later on in the program. My name is Letu Kapweya. I'm a friend of the Center of Excellence in Human Development. I'm that friend that comes around when there's nice food and there is some books to be handed out and so on. But I'm going to be your program director for today. And my job is really to get us through this program as smoothly as possible with smiles still on our faces. So to get that done, there's just a few things that I'd like to remind us of. First things first, I'm pulling out my cell phone, so I'm sure you know exactly what I'm about to say. If we could please put all our phones on silent mode. We are live streaming this event, which means there are people on the virtual platform who are also going to be looking at us. And we're also welcoming them as well. So if you need to use the gents or the ladies, the door that you're going to use to exit is the door on the far end of this building. You'll exit that way, you'll be able to use the toilets, and then you want to come back all around to the entrance that you entered from. Okay, so if you need to leave for any reason, that's the exit point, and you go all the way around to enter from where you registered and came in. If you, for any reason, need just some information or a little bit of a breather and would like to walk into the field and you're a young person and want some information on Wits University courses, there are some people on the field actually giving out some right information about what to study at Wits, as well as some bursary options that are available. You will be getting a free copy of this amazing book at the end. And we're going to sort of navigate everybody out towards the end of the program. You grab your copy, grab some lunch, and that'll be the end of our program. We have some entertainment for you as part of the program. So at some point, we'll all be getting up and doing a bit of a dance and just showing, especially the birth to zeros. You need to show the birth to 30s that you still got it. So with all of that said, let me introduce our first speaker for today, who's going to do the opening address. So Professor Shane Norris, who has been with this project since 1998. Now some of you would not have been here in 1998. But he's really been with this project for the longest time. Yesterday, a comment was made by one of the speakers, and he said, managing or coordinating academics is like herding cats. Professor Norris has coordinated a cohort study with a group so large, over 3,000 people. And I can imagine that must be like herding lions. He's probably the strongest person in this room. But besides that, on the day-to-day, he's a professor in pediatrics at Wits University. He's also the Center of Excellence in Human Development Director, as well as the Director of the Developmental Pathways for Health Research Unit here at BIRA. Professor Norris, over to you.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. It's so amazing to see everyone and all the faces and all of us to get together. We haven't got together as a full group since 2004. And for some of you, you may remember you were only 14 when we had the 14th birthday of the cohort, where we had all of many of you at Education Campus in Parktown. So that was the last time we were all together as a big group. So it's amazing to see everyone again. This is not the full cohort, but it's great that many of you came out, and will continue being in contact with yourselves and with your other cohort members past this event. Firstly, I wanted to just say a big thank you to all the organizers that have put time and effort into this event. Sarah and Letu and Vuyo, the teams from DPHOU, those are the folks wearing the t-shirts, the event organizers, and so forth. There's been a big team of individuals pulling this together and contacting you and trying to make this day a success. So big thank you. Obviously, a big thank you to Linda, who, as you'll hear the story, how the study started. But obviously, Linda's produced this amazing book that you're going to get a copy of. And we really do hope that you'll enjoy it, and Linda's going to speak a little bit more to that. The last thing I want to do before I pass back over to Letu is just to say a big thank you to yourselves for the time that you've given for now 32 years. It's amazing to believe you're 32. And what's remarkable is, you know, the birth to 30s, or now probably birth to 40s, you were all born in a very close range of one another, just 7 weeks apart. So you share a very, very interesting link being part of the study. And we really do appreciate the time and the efforts you've put into being part of the study over these many years. We would very much like to remain in contact with you. For some of you, we've been in contact with you recently because, you know, it's the birth to zeros and now birth to 40s, and obviously you've had children. So it's remarkable that we have 3 generations within this cohort. And we would very much like to keep in contact, and you will hear from us after this event. And we'd like to hear also your feedback past this event. So that's all I need to say, other than just have a good day, and thank you again for being with us. And I'll pass back to Letu. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to get on with the real interesting part of the program, which is hearing from Professor Linda Richter, the author of the book, telling us about the book and just her connection with all the participants that are here today. Now, I need to introduce Professor Linda Richter, and obviously, you probably know her better than I do. But what I would like to say about Professor Richter is the following. So, yes, she's authored this book, but she's someone with the most amazing ability to connect the most minute detail to the most broader context in relation to the lives that you all lived in South Africa at the time that you were born until the time right now. And you'll see this in the book. It's so detailed, yet the detail is so relevant. Professor Richter is a decorated academic, so I'm not even going to go through all her awards. But she's also a decorated grandmother and mother with sons and daughters and grandchildren in science. She has mentored so many people that have passed through her mentorship and have become really decorated scientists today. And I'm saying that in particular because this is something of an intergenerational conversation that we are having here today. And if anybody knows anything about passing down something from generation to another, it's Professor Linda Richter. One of the most heartwarming moments where somebody else was talking about her. So we were in a directors of forum, all the centers of excellence were having a directors forum in Port Elizabeth in 1 year. And one of the students of one of her students stood up and had to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her experience with the center. And she said, you know what? I feel like I'm Linda's grandchild. It's because of the mentorship she gave to my supervisor that I'm benefiting so much from what I have right now before me in my own supervisor. So with that said, could you please give a round of applause as we welcome Professor Richter to the stage.
Thank you very much. It's a great thrill to be here, and I hope I know there are one or two people in the audience who are writing books. And the moment it is done is so exciting. And I've spoken to one person, she knows who she is, about the book she's writing, and I've encouraged her to finish her book too. Now, you all know that you're invited here today because you were part of Birth to 10, which became Birth to 20, which became Birth to 20 Plus, and is now Birth to 30. And I'm very glad we're already using the words Birth to 40. Now, the reason we started the study was because things were changing so fast in the 1980s. The apartheid legislation was collapsing. Everything was being dismantled from the past. This meant that the network of laws that were keeping black people out of so-called white urban areas were abolished. And so we knew that in the future there would be a change in where people lived. There would be a lot of migration into the cities, which we still see, and that this would change a lot of things for people. We knew the towns and cities weren't ready. They didn't have all of the facilities to accommodate everybody. But nonetheless, as scientists, we predicted that a number of things would change. We knew from studies elsewhere. We knew, for example, that infectious diseases like diarrhea and pneumonia would decrease because people would have better sanitation, better water, and better health facilities. But on the other hand, we knew that certain urban diseases, like chronic infections, TB, HIV, that these would increase, and that there would be diseases and illnesses related to people's lifestyles, what they ate, how much they exercised, their alcohol and drug use, violence, accidents in the home, accidents on the road, and so on. So the overall aim of Birth to 30 when it was started was to study this complete environment, the biological environment, the psychological environment, the economic environment that are associated with the survival and health of children living in an urban area. We wanted these children of the 90s, which you are, to be the baseline for actions to improve the health of urban people going forward. So we started recruiting, as you know, pregnant women in Soweto and Johannesburg in late 1989, imagining that they would start delivering their babies in the first part of 1990. Now, you won't remember what Soweto, Johannesburg was like at that time, but some of the Birth to Zeros will, and you might have well told your children the stories, and you might well have learned the history. But at that time, the time just before you were born, the nationalist government didn't willingly want to give up control of the country, and they continued to oppress any sort of opposition to them. There was violent competition between the various black political groups. There was overzealous shopping boycotts. Some of the mothers will remember that you went to town and then young people stopped you and took all your groceries or poured your oil onto the floor. And of course, criminal violence continued in that area. So amongst 10% of the pregnant women we interviewed at that time said they were in fear of their lives. They were feared that they or their close family would be killed. And more than 200 women that we interviewed during their pregnancies said that their partners had beaten them during their maternity. There was an atmosphere of fear. Our staff went around contacting families in groups because they were afraid, and many families wouldn't let them into their homes because strangers were not trusted. There was a major hospital strike at Baragwanath by nurses who wanted their unions to be recognized and for more pay. And so there were unpredictable strikes and protests all over the town. And I remember when I was going to Barrow, I used to be terrified because those huge armored vehicles, those Caspers, would roll down the Soweto streets and there would be truckloads of army soldiers with their guns. And that was what people were facing every day. So when women came to the clinics, that was what they were going through. But the situation calmed down greatly when Nelson Mandela was released from Victor Verster prison on the 11th of February 1990. This was just 6 weeks before the first baby was born into the study on the 23rd of April. And as you know, we recruited births from 23rd of April to the 8th of June. Now, the fact that you started being born so close to when Mandela was released from prison is how you got the nickname Mandela's Children. But you, as a cohort, a group of children born at that very significant time in South Africa's history, signaled our hope for a much better democratic country. You were only 2 years old when the Constitution was promulgated as the supreme law of the Republic of South Africa. A constitution that is recognized everywhere in the world as being the best. All you know as a cohort is a free South Africa. And when I interviewed many of you, that's something you spoke about so strongly, how much you valued the freedom you now experienced compared to what your parents and grandparents had been through. Now, there are many reasons why I wanted to write this book. Not only that I'm getting older and I was worried the history would not be there, I'm the only person from the original study who's still actively involved in it. So I have the institutional memory. I remember what happened, when, and why. I know that we started as a poorly funded part-time group of researchers with 2 offices in the basement of Johannesburg, now Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. We had a handful of staff to collect data from the most populous area in South Africa, living in an area of more than 200 square kilometers. That's our area. We entered data on mainframe computers, for those who know, but then every time you pressed the enter key, these huge disks would go chugga, 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 and that was one data entry. When you were about 2 years old, we moved into 5 offices at Barra, which were the old stables, because Barra at some time was a halfway point for the army, and they stabled horses in those rooms that we took over. And you'll know them now. It's the renal clinic opposite the building that we are now in. Later, we moved into the top floor of that library building, which was the hospital library, and Shane eventually took over and renovated the whole building. And it's now a very hospitable place to visit and see the staff. In 2022, you, the cohort that we had originally planned only to follow for 10 years, are 32 years. We have published close to 300 scientific papers in some of the best journals in the world. More than 62 graduates have obtained master's and PhD degrees through the study. And we have staff that have worked for the study for 30, 25, 20 years, including Barbara Monyapati, who you all will recognize. She's going to speak to us briefly today. We have fully equipped, internationally accredited laboratories. We have amongst the best equipment in the world for measuring what we're interested in. And to date, we have collected, as you know, physical data, physiological data, psychological data, educational data, social data, family data, over 22 data collections between birth and adulthood. And there'll be people sitting in this audience who arrived for every one of those visits. Bt30 is the largest and the biggest and longest running birth cohort study in Africa. It is known throughout the world as a highly valued source of longitudinal data. And people come to us to ask for social or biological data. Of course, all your data is anonymous. It's only in the computers by number, so you're not known in that database. And we form part of a unique collaboration with 4 other birth cohort studies in developing countries, in India, Guatemala, Philippines, and Brazil. The Bt30 platform has been used to launch a number of large-scale multi-year projects that some of the Bt30 staff are now working on. Now, these achievements have all been made possible by Professor Shane Norris and a dedicated team of staff. So I would really appreciate him standing up and you clapping and saying, he's done something quite incredible. So that's Shane. So apart from creating a historical record of the study, my main motivation in writing the book is really to affirm your experiences of the study and what was happening in your life at the time that you participated. I want to contribute to your memories. I don't want you to forget this experience, and ensure that you and your families and your children know what a significant study Bt30 is and what an important part you played in a study that is very important in science in the world and in policy making in the world. I sincerely hope that you and your children will be willing to continue to participate in Bt40, in Bt50, in Bt60, if we're able to secure the funding to keep going. Many of the things have changed during the course of the study, and they continue to change as each day goes by. I finished the book last year in July, and I structured it into the following sections. In section 1, there are 4 chapters, and I describe how the study started and why. In the next section are 3 chapters about you, about your families, your parents, how conditions were in Soweto and Johannesburg in 1990, and how they are now. And then there are 5 chapters on the science, and I've classified them under headings because I don't know all the science in the study, but I could only write about the things I really know something about. So it's the stories of violence, health and education, growth and development, social engagement, and education and learning. Then there's the last 2 chapters in which I reflect on what did I learn, because I learned an enormous amount, as a person as well as a scientist. My son was born in 1986, and in a way I was walking this road with you. So when my son was difficult and hard to manage, we were interviewing parents who were saying, my child is difficult and hard to manage. When my child experimented with drugs and I panicked as a parent, we were interviewing young people who were experimenting with drugs. So I knew what you were going through at the same time. Now, there were lots of things changing in the study, and I'll give you one example, and that is about language. So the language story unfolded in 2 ways. The one is in data collection, and the other in enrollment. Names and addresses were often incorrectly transcribed. The mothers of the Bt10 who are here know that when you had your baby, the nurse copied the baby's details onto a little form called a birth notification form. That form went to one of 5 municipalities in this area, all divided by race. The Dipmeda, the Soweto, the Lenasia, the Johannesburg, etc. When they copied those names and details into the registers, sometimes they copied them. Somebody said a particular name, and it was copied with a different kind of spelling, and it was sometimes copied 2 or 3 times because it was sent to the Lenasia municipality and the Dipkloof municipality and so on. And at the time when we started the study, there were 2, at least 2, but probably more, what we call orthographies or spelling conventions for names. So that, for example, a name, a word in a particular language might be transcribed in a different language in a different way. So the name Hadebi, for example, in isiZulu can sometimes be called Radebi in isiXhosa. And so we tried to put all these names together with the addresses that we could find, and that composed the cohort of people that we were wanting to study for the next 10 years. Now, in addition to that, as you know, many people take on an English name, and this has long been a tradition because administrators and people in authority didn't always know how to spell African traditional names. And this is how Madiba acquired his name, Nelson, in addition to Roluhlala, a name apparently which was given to him on his first day of school by his teacher at the time, Miss Mdingana. So apart from the challenges of putting the names all together, we also had to then find people at the addresses in Soweto, which had an inconsistent numbering system and very few street names. And huge blocks of flats in Johannesburg that had started being rented out to people, sometimes 2 or 3 families living in those flats. Now, Johannesburg and Soweto are probably the most linguistically diverse parts of the country, where all 11 official languages are spoken and even more languages. And so when we were delivering our questionnaires, we had to think about how we were going to translate them. And we started off by translating and back translating, which is how scientists check that you're asking the right things, in Zulu, Xhosa, Sotho, English, and Afrikaans. But what we found is that Soweto is such a vibrant source of language. There is so much what we call code switching. People will put a word from one language into a sentence of another. There's so many variants. There's iskamfu, there's slang, there's people who are from Venda speaking sort of a version of isiZulu. So we actually used a very innovative technique, and that is we would sit with our staff, and we would start with a word or a sentence, and then we would all discuss how to say this in the language to ensure that we could communicate with each other. And the technology also changed. Today you see all of our staff walking around with tablets. At that time we were using mainframe computers. Then we went to Apple desktops with stiffies. Then we went to other desktops with floppies. And then we went to laptops. And eventually now we're on tablets all connected through Wi-Fi to mainframes at the university where they're stored. So turning to the science stories. Now the published papers cover a wide range of topics, and some of you might find one or other topic particularly interesting. So I hope you will go through those chapters and think about they were based on answers you gave to questionnaires at each time that we interviewed you. But amongst the most important scientific findings across the breadth of the study are what we call, they support the theory of the developmental origins of health and disease. So most of us acquire our potential for health or ill health from our parents, from their social and biological attributes and the circumstances in which they live. They, in turn, acquire their social and psychological predisposition from their families and the conditions in which they lived. And this is so important because you, as parents, you need to realize what an important source of influence you are for your own children, and that you have the chance to make things better for them regardless of their past. So you have to stay close to them to boost their development, support them, build their confidence, encourage their learning, and protect them from harm. So just to give you a snapshot of how much things changed over the 30 years. So the birth to 30 mothers sitting in the audience are on average taller than their mothers, the birth to 0 mothers. They are on average a centimetre taller, and we know in every society around the world, as people's social circumstances, economic circumstances, and nutrition improves, they grow bigger. So your children are going to be bigger than you in all probability. Now, more than half of the birth to 30 mothers have a matric, whereas only a quarter of their mothers, the birth to 0 mothers, had a matric. So we know there's been an enormous education gain. And more birth to 30 mothers live in households with modern facilities like a motor car, a refrigerator, and a washing machine. On the downside, more birth to 30 mothers had babies before they were 18 years of age than their mothers. And more birth to 30 mothers smoke and drink alcohol, feel overwhelmed by debt, report intimate partner violence and depression compared to their mothers. So in some ways, life has become better, and in some ways it hasn't. And these are the things that worry everyone about urban environments. They bring new problems at the same time as bringing benefits. Now, as many of you have experienced, birth to 30 has always been more than a study. During the last 33 years, enduring friendships have been formed, love affairs and marriages have taken place, divorces and separations happened, children born and loved ones died. And I want to extend a deep sympathy to the parents in the audience who are here even though they lost their birth to 30 children. And I share your grief because my husband died in March of this year, and so I want you to know we are thinking of you and we're with you. Now, and you will also remember staff from the study. I'm sure all of you remember Tabili Sabia, Maiki Matabani, who you will probably all remember. She couldn't be here today because there's the unveiling of her mother's tomb. Lisa Tlu, Sister Chrissy, and Barbara Monyaporti. These people have worked for the study for 25 years, and then we have people who 19 years, 20 years. So this has been much more than a study. It's been a commitment by all of us. These people, these staff members, have seen you grow. You probably told them things that you've never told anybody else because you trusted them. And Barbara Monyaporti, we asked her to come today, although she has retired, to speak about some of her experience as a staff member on the study. So, Barbara.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Barbara. I started working at Bt30 in 1991. I had no idea what medical research was, but I applied anyway. And then after an intensive training period, the work started. We visited the hospitals and the clinics where our participants were born. And after that, it was fieldwork. And for me, fieldwork took me out of my comfort zone because suddenly I came face to face with the Rainbow Nation. Different cultures, religions, and languages, which myself and my colleagues had to embrace in order to do our work properly. Now, the first 5 years of the study, when our participants were 5 years old, it was time for school readiness. I remember asking them what they wanted to be when they grow up and why. So you can imagine the responses. It was very cute. And then came the Bt30 period. Everything suddenly changed. With the birth of our first, I don't know if I should say Bt30 grandchild. So I remember myself and Professor Shane Norris running around like headless chicken, trying to organize a questionnaire, making sure that everything is ready when they come in. And then during the Developmental Pathways for Health Research Unit, the 3G study was born. And I was thrown into the deep end because I was tasked to head the study. I was even sent for training as an anthropometrist in Jordan. And coming back, I had to train my colleagues in order to assist me with the 3G study. Now, to our participants, I hope you realize what an impact you had in this study. You should be proud of being involved in the biggest study ever undertaken in Africa. I know most of our people had no idea what the medical research means to them, because I remember we had to explain and explain at the beginning, but still they wouldn't understand. But at least they made sure that we got the information that we wanted. So to you, our participants, I thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And just to tell you how much we benefited from really remarkable staff. So Barbara has traveled, I think she might have even traveled to more countries than I have. She was part of the Soweto Teachers Choir, and while she was working for us, she was traveling all over the world. And one of her extraordinary experiences with the choir was that they were in New York at the same time that Nelson Mandela addressed the United Nations and asked the United Nations to continue the boycott against South Africa because it was working and the nationalist government was beginning to soften. And Mandela's entourage realized that the Soweto Teachers Choir was in New York, and so he arranged for the choir to sing to the United Nations. Now, since then, Barbara has been organizing trips with older people all over the world. So they save during the year and then they go off to some exotic place. So I always talk about her as a woman of the world. Thank you so much, Barbara. Now, all participants in the study will receive a free copy of the book. And that's with thanks to the Oppenheim Memorial Trust, who gave us a grant that allowed us to print these books and enable them to be given away without cost. And they're good quality books. They've been really beautifully produced. And it's our way of saying thank you to all of you for your time and your commitment to the study. We hope the books will become an integral part of your lives and an important part of your home, and that you'll share your experiences with your families and especially your children. When I got my PhD, I was the first person in my family to get such a high degree. And my mother used to keep my thesis on her coffee table. And, I mean, she didn't know what it was about. And she couldn't have explained it to anybody, but what she could do is show people the gold writing and say, my daughter wrote this. So I want to visit some homes in 2 years' time and see the book on your coffee table and you telling people, I was part of this. Now, in closing, I'm delighted to introduce one of our participants to you, Sanna Ntao. Some of you might already know her or know of her for her radio, her events work, modeling, and so on. She is in charge of the music and entertainment today, but she's going to tell you a little bit about her participation in Bt30. So come up, Sanna.
Oh, sanibonani. Nikahle. Wow, this feels, I feel honored. You know, growing up and knowing that you're one of those kids that you have to go to Bt30, whenever your mom would say, hey, Bt30, you'd have to think of something. You'll get pocket money at least. Although we know, hey, but look at an injection. But at least never khona go kula off unyana ka di sweets, which was better. But I'm also a participant. By profession, I'm a police officer. I'm a model. I'm an actor. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a radio DJ for Diplov Community Radio. Slot is Akase Monday and Tuesday from the hours of 2 until 4. I'm doing a lot for the community, by the way. I'm also a founder of Black Lulu Productions. I manage artists. I book them. Bo Ufelani, Moja Love. You know when people shoot, I'm the one that books those people. I give them roles, I give them characters. But today it's not about me, it's about the book. Truth be told, I wish my mother was alive. When I have to talk about my story, then my story is a bit sad. But it is, I hope it inspires a lot of us here. Because we know growing up, we don't grow up in the same way. Some of us had it bad, yes, I'm one of those. But here I am today, in front of everyone and telling my story. I also have my daughter by me. She's there. One thing I'm grateful of is to be part of the study, I'm still saying. But Jackson was always there, Mom Mickey was always there to hold my hand throughout. They were the only people I was close to. I'm not saying I'm not close with everyone, but they were more of the ones that I was very, very close to. Because whenever I encountered problems in my life, they were the first people to come to my house. Whether it was transport issues or not, they would send a car to my house just for them to come pick me up. Because they knew what they wanted at the end of the day. They had to make sure that I get tested, go through the studies and everything else. And Professor, I'm very blessed, honestly, for you to give me this opportunity and to also bring my artist along. We have dancers, by the way. We have singers. I'll be part of those ones that will be singing. I also have songs. I'm a musician. I do a lot, I know. And someone sitting there will be thinking, how does this child do all of this alone? You make time for everything you want. I believe sleeping is for the dead people, not for us. If you want money, you go all out there and you make sure you get it. You know, being here feels great. Seeing all my mothers, they were always there to say, hey, Koketso, you need to go to the scan. I'm like, no. What am I going to do inside this thing? Do you want to kill me? Koketso, just enter. Nothing will happen. Then you'll have to see your bones. Then I'll be grateful that at least I know what's happening with my body. The most important thing is for us to always get tested. I know a lot of us people will be saying, hey, this thing of testing is not on. But truth is, you need to know your status. You need to know where you stand. Whether you're positive or whether you're negative, the choice is yours, whether you take it upon yourself to go take your treatment and whatnot. Being HIV positive doesn't mean it's the life sentence. You're not dead when you're positive. Now, coming to my story. My story is very painful, honestly. The reason I'm trying to speak like this is because I'm trying to leave it aside, but I can't cut it because that's the reason I'm here. I'm the second born of the late Dimakato, who was also a participant. My mom was also a participant. She was part of the Bt30 study, and I'm grateful she was one of those women that were here. But then I had to take it upon myself and be the only one to take myself there and catch taxis and go to Para and whatnot because I was left alone. I had to do everything on my own, truth be told, after my mom passed away. That's the other reason that made me to be a hustler. You know, when you grow up and you don't have anyone who can hold your hand throughout, you know you have to make it for yourself or do it for yourself, more especially for the ones that you have. If maybe I didn't have kids, probably I wouldn't be a hustler that I am today. But they're the reason I'm hustling and making it because I want them to have the better future. Now, my story goes like this. Yes, I'm 32 years of age, but I know I look 21. I know. I get that a lot. Even the small boys will be saying, sisters, you are my type. I'm like, hey, bring your brother here. Because of how I take care of myself. Gym is very important. That's number one. Bear that in mind. Secondly, me being a police officer, what pushed me to being a police officer? The environment that I was raised in, that pushed me to be a police officer. Why did I leave SABS or try to do many things besides being an officer? I figured that there are most people here that wanted to have it all. Some people want to be motivational speakers, but they don't get the platforms to be motivational speakers because they don't have the right connections. I'm working for SABS, yes, but how did I make it to the entertainment industry? How come I always chill with Bo Abdul Koza? People will be wondering, how do you do it, sisters? When it comes to things like this. Growing up, I was taught how to survive, not how to love. Someone would be saying, why was I taught how to survive instead of how to love? They gave me a tough love. But without her, I don't think I would be here today. She was always pushing me. You are doing great, Sana. Never give up. But Jackson was there. Mam Miki was there to say, whatever you need, even if it's 10 rand, just make sure that you get it from us. When I was pregnant with my daughter, Mbalentle, I was going there almost every month. And whenever they didn't call me, I'll be very angry. How, guys, why don't you call me? I'll call them myself. How, guys, this month you didn't call me. Hi, Koketso, we saw you last month. Hi, guys, I need to come back. The reason I was always there was because of I know must I'd be treated like a princess that side. The truth is, whenever you grow up, there are challenges that we face individually. It's true when they say depression, it's around us, it's living amongst us. Yes, it does. There are people that can talk to people. When you have no one besides you, you are definitely in trouble. As long as you have someone besides you, then you will know that everything you go through, there's someone you can talk to or show your stories to. People need to know one thing. Nothing in this world you get for free. Everything you have, you need to hustle for it. And I thank everyone who came here to support us. We also have singers out there. So I'm thankful for this opportunity.
I must say, it was a real pleasure for me to meet Sana too. It opened my eyes to so much. But now I have the greatest pleasure, and that is to introduce you to Sibusiso Vilane, South Africa's most esteemed explorer. In 2003, he summited Everest from the south side, the first black man in the world to do that. Not only a truly heroic man would put himself through such a life-threatening experience again, but he did it in 2005 from the more difficult north side of Everest. And he dedicated his climb to Bt30 and to 2 other charities. Since then, Sibusiso has completed all the 7 summits, and he's trekked to the North and South Poles. For these, he has achieved what is called the Explorer's Grand Challenge, one of only a handful of people in the whole world. He dedicated the 1,113-kilometer trek to the South Pole, which is just about as long as from here to Cape Town, to the children of South Africa, including you. When I interviewed Sibusiso for this book, we talked about the sense of freedom that so many of you feel. When I interviewed people for the book, they spoke so strongly about I'm free. He said he understood this deeply and that it resonated in his heart too. He spoke of encouraging people to value their psychological and political freedom. And their next step in life was to learn how to use it. And so we're very grateful that Sibusiso has just come back from another mountain. And so he couldn't be here with us in person, but he's on Zoom. Okay, thanks very much. If you need to stand up to see him on the screen.
In a small way, I have been a part of. But just to let people know how I got involved in the project, because I'm not anywhere near scientist. I'm an adventurer. I climb mountains, as Professor Linda has just correctly said or outlined in her introduction, which I appreciate so much. I've just run up and down mountains as I please. But while I was sitting in 2004, having actually summarized the reason why I had embarked on a journey to climb Everest in the first place. And when I went to Everest in 2003, I had a very big personal agenda. I had a message to share and send to the world that it doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't matter how you grow up. The most important is, do you really want to make a difference in your life? And I've always believed that Africans can rise up and achieve great things, and in any sphere of life, be it in science, be it in education, be it in adventure, be it in mountain climbing. But I had achieved that goal of having sent the message to the world about you and I having the ability to achieve things. And I thought that was it for me. I was done and I was content with my achievement, having come from a background where I was not even a climber. But after about sitting down for a number of months, trying to ponder and grasp the meaning of why I succeeded on Everest, I realized that it wasn't just for me to go and sit with the achievement. I needed to do something else. So while I was grappling with what the next would be, somehow my heart went back to Everest. So I wanted to climb it for a second time. But if there's one thing I want to share today as a message to all of us, it doesn't matter who you are and what sphere of your life you are. I think you've got to find enough reason to do the things that you want to do in your life. I had the opportunity to sort of listen to the last part of the lady who just finished speaking before Linda introduced me. She said something. She says that she hustles so much. And I believe that she hustles so much because she has found enough reason why she has to hustle. If you've got enough reasons, you will never stop. You will never give up. And it doesn't matter how long it takes to do it. It might have taken Professor Linda 3 years to work on this book, or even almost 30 years of working on the project, collecting all the data. But that is what keeps us going. That is where our resilience comes from. That is where our determination comes from. That is where we fight and stand up for what we believe in. So while I was thinking about what will be the one thing that would be a next, and that would be a personal thing, but I will not be doing it for myself, I'll be doing it for a bigger goal or bigger objective. It was then that I met a friend of mine, Michelle Friedman, who then introduced me to the program. Then in 2004, it was still at its second phase, which was Bt30 then. So when she told me about it, I thought, well, this is a project you want to be involved in, because in your whole life, you do want and support children. You believe in their upbringing, you believe in their education. Therefore, this is a project that you want to support and help and assist in what you have. Because as I said, I'm not a scientist, but what I had was I had the time, I had the physical ability, and I had the voice to raise awareness around the project. So I decided to add it on to the two other charity organizations that I had chosen for the climb. And these three were really very profound. I think it was so big for me to go back to the mountain, tough as it was, and I was going to climb it by the most difficult and daunting side of the mountain, which with a less success rate. But the point here is I wasn't very determined by climbing the summit of Mount Everest, because I had been, well, I would have loved to have done it anyway. But the biggest for me was to raise enough awareness about Bt30 as the project, then the SOS Children's Village and Africa Foundation, and over and above that, hope to raise some money that I was going to present to the three organizations in the form of a check. So after 2 months, I came back home and very grateful and delighted that I had been able to raise some money supported by other organizations and companies. And it was such a fulfilling delight and a humbling moment for me to stand as a young boy who had grown up in the bushveld, in the lowveld, who could not have any checkbook, that I was able, through the support and through my efforts up Mount Everest, I was able to give the 3 checks. And I solely believed that it was going to add a little bit of help so that the project was going to be sustained in whatever it needed. So it was very important for me, and it just fulfilled me that in a way or the other, the one thing I'd wanted to achieve and as a child, which was just to help other children, because other people came into my life and supported me with my educational needs. And this was the opportunity, and I had taken it. And here I was presenting a check that was going to be assisting on the research of young children of our democratic South Africa. And the pride came from the fact of knowing that now that, because I challenged young South Africans to step up into the plate and go out and achieve in their own space, whatever it is, the question was, do they really have the confidence? Do they value the freedom that they have? And I didn't really know that it was happening, but I knew that the message was out there. So that's why it was such a delight to be involved, to say, you know what, you are free, to do anything, and you can do anything, and it doesn't matter who you are, how you grow up. It's a matter of how far and how high you want to go in life, and you can go as far as you want. So today, as we celebrate the launch of this book, I still want to challenge the people that we are thanking very dearly for having participated for this long. All the participants, I just want to challenge them to always look and think beyond their circumstances, beyond where they are, beyond how they grew up, beyond who their parents were, and beyond their existence right now. Just think beyond that, because you know what? If you think beyond where you are, you're able to think beyond your limitations, because the limitations you have are only the ones that only you can stop yourself from achieving anything. So I'm so grateful and delighted to have been part of this, and thanks Professor Linda for allowing me the time to work, and for the entire project itself, for accepting me as an inspirational figure to be able to be involved in, as much as I wasn't anywhere near academic when it came to science. But it is very profound and delightful that after many years of people reading about us, Sibusiso went to Everest and he was raising funds and awareness for Bt30, and people didn't really fully grasp or didn't know what it was all about. But today, it is such a delight to be sitting here and saying there is a book that is out there based on that. So most of the people would say, oh, yes, we remember those years ago when Sibusiso went to climb Everest. This was the reason. And you sitting right there where you are today in Soweto, sorry, I couldn't be there with you because of my recent return from another mountain, and in fact, also resting for a comrades next Sunday. I just want to say that you're very privileged to be sitting there, and you're very lucky that you will be walking away with a copy of the book. I can only encourage you to read it, and then obviously make it worth your while. But thank you very much indeed for the opportunity. Enjoy the festivities and have a wonderful afternoon. It is such a delight for me, and thank you, Professor Linda and your team, and for everyone that has been involved, that supported the project, that we are here today. It is very humbling, and I'm so grateful. Thank you very much indeed.
Sibusiso, I hope you're still tuned. One of my best friends is with me today for the weekend, and I'm very, very grateful for her support. And I want to introduce her to Sibusiso, because stand up, Cheryl. Cheryl won Comrades in 1982. And her husband chaired the Comrades Marathon for many years, and she's chaired the Comrades Marathon for the last 8. And Sibusiso has just said he's going to run this grueling race, this real putting yourself against everything. So Sibusiso, I want you to say hello to Cheryl. Cheryl, say hello to Sibusiso.
Hello, Sibusiso, are you there? I think you're also going. But I'd also just like to say hello to all the participants here today. I'm really so proud of my very best friend, and I'm also so very, very proud of what each and every one of you have done. I'd also like to say that in 2005 and 2006, I organized the Soweto Marathon. It was the one and only time that it started and finished at the Elka Stadium, because we felt that the Soweto Marathon should actually start and finish in Soweto as opposed to out at Nasrec. But logistics were so overwhelming that the following year we had to go back to Nasrec. But really, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and I congratulate you all on your contribution to science and everything else. Thanks.
Okay. So yes, now we are at that stage of the program where we're going to get a little entertainment. And you've heard from Sana, and she's going to come back with her crew. So we're going to ask you to just give us about 10 minutes while you get the stage ready. And then we're going to get going with that. So after Sana and her team are done, then it's going to be time for us to grab a book. Once you get your book, we are then going to usher you outside to grab some lunch, and that will be the end of today. Okay, so just give us about 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to get the stage ready. And hopefully you're going to join us in a bit of dancing. Okay? Right, thank you.
These are my dancers. Bangade, ne? But they're good dancers, I know. So they're gonna dance for us. But look at Chavele di Pinatsi too. Yeah, back when I'm Chavana, I think somewhere here. Hey DJ, kupatsa kubatsa ditse. So yeah, these are my girls. Instead of Babeko Strateng, Basabeka Batu, they'd rather dance. So over to you, Banais.